She stinks and she's not staying here. My daughter-in-law said, but what my son did was shocking. Mrs. Margaret felt her heart race as she gripped the worn handle of her suitcase tightly. At 72, she never imagined she'd be standing at the door of her own son's apartment, hearing words that cut deeper than any physical wound. She stinks, and she's not staying here. Ashley's shrill voice echoed through the hallway of the luxurious building in South Beach. Michael, you can't be serious. The silence from her son hung in the air like a stone on Margaret's chest. Michael stood motionless, eyes downcast, while his wife continued her cruel assault. The elderly woman peered through the scarf covering her gray hair, searching the young man's eyes for the boy she had raised alone in rural Florida. "Mom, Michael began, but his voice trailed off. "There's no but, Michael." Ashley gestured with her perfectly manicured hands, her white dress a stark contrast to the harshness of her words. "Look at this woman, those old clothes, that musty smell. This is a $2 million apartment." Margaret lowered her eyes, feeling the weight of humiliation. Her clothes were indeed worn, and maybe the scent of the bus ride still clung to the fabric. It had taken her 3 days to get there, selling her last belongings to scrape together bus fare after being evicted from her little house in Hialeah. "Ashley, please," Michael murmured, but without conviction. "Please, nothing." Her daughter-in-law pointed directly at Margaret. "Your mother needs to find somewhere else. She's not staying here." Tears streamed down Margaret's wrinkled face, but she held onto her dignity. She lifted her chin and looked straight at her son. "Michael, my boy, I just need a few days to—" "A few days?" Ashley laughed scornfully. "Mrs. Margaret, don't you understand? This is a luxury building. The neighbors will talk. Imagine if they find out we have a—" She paused, searching for the sharpest words. "A low-income woman living here." Margaret's heart shattered with every word. She had sacrificed her entire youth, working as a seamstress to pay for her son's education. She had sold her grandmother's sewing machine to buy his law books. She had gone hungry so he could have the best. "I worked my whole life to give him an education," Margaret said, her voice trembling but firm. "I never asked for anything in return." "And that's very touching," Ashley crossed her arms. "But now he has a new family, a new life, and frankly, your presence here doesn't fit our standard." Michael finally looked up, but instead of defending his mother, he whispered, "Mom, maybe it really is better if you stay somewhere else for a few days, just until we figure things out." His words felt like a knife to her heart. Margaret's legs weakened. The boy she had cradled, carried when he was sick, cheered at his graduation. Now he was rejecting her at his doorstep. "All right," she said, her voice barely audible. "I understand." Ashley immediately grabbed Margaret's suitcase and placed it in the hallway. "Great, I'm glad you're being reasonable." Before Margaret could say another word, the door slammed shut with a sharp thud. The silence in the hallway was deafening. The elderly woman stood frozen, staring at the closed door, trying to process what had just happened. In the elevator, the tears came in full force. 72 years of life, and she had never felt so small, so insignificant. The doorman, Mr. George, greeted her as always, but she could barely respond. How could she explain being rejected by her own flesh and blood? Outside the building, Margaret sat on a bench in the plaza across the street. The ocean breeze of South Beach brought some relief, but it didn't heal the burning wound in her chest. She watched the street activity, the luxury cars, the well-dressed people. She truly didn't belong in that world. Her phone rang. It was Michael. "Mom, I'm sorry. Ashley's going through a tough time, you know. Her father's company is having problems." "I understand, son. Look, I'll find you a nice place to stay, a good hotel, leave it to me. Don't worry, Michael, I'll manage." "Mom, please don't talk like that. I just need some time to talk to her." Margaret hung up. She knew her son was sincere, but she also knew he'd chosen his side, and it wasn't hers. Night fell over South Beach, and Margaret was still on the bench. Some people passed by, others stopped to feed crumbs to the pigeons. She remembered visiting Michael in the early years of his marriage, how she loved feeding the birds in that same square. Simpler times, when Ashley still pretended to like her. "Mrs. Margaret?" A familiar voice made her look up. It was William, the night shift security guard from the building, a black man around 50, always kind to her. "Hi, William. Are you okay? I saw you leave the building crying." Margaret hesitated. How could she explain the humiliation without feeling ashamed? I had a problem up there." William sat beside her on the bench. "Can I help in any way?" "I don't know if anyone can help me now, son." "Try telling me. Sometimes talking helps." And then, to her own surprise, Margaret told him everything. The 3-day trip, the desperation after being kicked out, Ashley's cold welcome, the sharp words, her son's silence. William listened quietly, shaking his head at times. "Wow, that's a tough situation, Mrs. Margaret. Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" "Not yet. Look, I can't do much, but I have a suggestion. There's a small break room in the building for employees. It's not fancy, but there's a couch and a bathroom. If you'd like, you can stay there tonight." "William, I can't accept that. If they find out..." "No one will find out, ma'am. I'll keep an eye out. Tomorrow you can figure things out." The man's kindness nearly made her cry again. A stranger offering more care than her own son. "You're very kind, William. Life's already hard enough. We gotta help each other, right?" Margaret spent the night in the employee break room. The couch wasn't comfortable, but it was better than the street. William brought her coffee and a roll from the grill, refusing to take any money. The next morning, Michael showed up in the lobby with an envelope in his hands. He looked tired with deep circles under his eyes. "Mum, I talked to Ashley. She needs some time. Here's money for you to stay at a hotel for a few days." Margaret looked at the envelope without taking it. "How much time, Michael?" "What do you mean? How much time does your wife need? A week? A month? A year?" Her son looked away. "I don't know, Mom. She's scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared her friends will find out about our family situation." "What family situation? Having a mother?" "It's not that, Mom. It's just, well, she comes from a very different family than ours." Margaret finally understood. Ashley was ashamed of her humble background, her simple clothes, her working-class life. "I see," she said, taking the envelope. "And you, Michael, are you ashamed of me too?" Her son's silence was answer enough. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, Margaret went to a cheap hotel in downtown Miami. The room was small and windowless, but at least it was hers. For the first few days, she just lay there trying to understand how she had reached this point. At 72 years old, homeless, penniless, rejected by her only son. By the second week, Michael's money was running out. Margaret knew she couldn't rely on him forever. She needed to find a solution. That's when she saw an ad on the hotel bulletin board. Cleaning person wanted for building in South Beach. Experience required. Night shift. The address was her son's building. Margaret hesitated. It would be humiliating to work in the same place where she'd been rejected, but it would also be a chance to be near Michael, even if he didn't know. The next day, she introduced herself to Mrs. Barbara, the building manager. A sturdy woman in her 60s with dyed blonde hair and glasses perched on the tip of her nose. "Do you have cleaning experience?" "All my life, Mrs. Barbara." "And can you handle heavy work? 15 floors here plus the garage." "I can manage. The shift is from 11 at night to 6 in the morning. The pay isn't much, but it's what we have." "I'll take it." "Great. You can start tonight. Oh, and there's a uniform. You'll have to wear a mask because of the cleaning chemicals." Margaret smiled. The mask would be perfect to avoid being recognized. On her first night, she had to hold back tears while cleaning the 14th floor hallway where Michael's apartment was. She wiped the floor where her tears had fallen weeks before. The routine was grueling. Margaret cleaned every floor from the lobby to the penthouse. Her knees ached, her back protested, but she kept going. At least she had honest work. In the third week, something unexpected happened. Margaret was cleaning the 14th floor hallway when she heard the elevator doors open. It was Ashley, coming back from some late-night party. Her daughter-in-law was unsteady on her feet, clearly drunk. Hey you!" Ashley shouted at Margaret, who kept her head down. You could clean better here, huh? My husband pays a lot for this condo. Margaret just nodded, pretending not to understand English well. Ashley stepped closer. Do you speak English? A little, ma'am, Margaret replied, disguising her voice. Oh, good. At least you're polite. Not like that devil of a mother-in-law who showed up here. Margaret's heart clenched, but she kept cleaning. Can you believe it? Some filthy, stinking old woman wanting to live in my apartment. Ashley laughed loudly. Had to kick her out. Wasn't about to dirty my home with that thing. You must have suffered a lot, Margaret murmured. Her, please. People like that don't suffer. They're used to misery. Ashley went into the apartment, leaving Margaret alone in the hallway. The older woman leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. Her daughter-in-law's words stung like lashes. But that same night, Margaret made an important discovery. While emptying the trash from Michael's apartment, she found a letter from the university where he worked as a professor. The contents shocked her. Michael was being investigated for plagiarism in his master's thesis. If proven, he'd lose his job and his degree. Margaret kept the letter. She might need it someday. Weeks passed and Margaret continued her silent work. She observed the residents, learned their routines, their secrets. She found out the couple on the 12th floor was separating, that the woman on the 8th floor had a drinking problem, that the penthouse businessman was going broke. But Ashley was the one who intrigued her most. Her daughter-in-law always came home late, often drunk, talking to herself in the elevator. One night, Margaret overheard something revealing. Damn life, Ashley muttered, leaning against the elevator wall. Everyone expects me to be perfect. No one knows what I go through. Margaret began paying closer attention to Ashley's comings and goings. She discovered that Ashley saw a psychologist every Tuesday, received angry calls from someone called Dad, and cried in secret in the building's laundry room. One night, Margaret found Ashley crying on the fire escape. Her daughter-in-law was sitting on the steps, still in her party dress but with her face streaked with tears. Are you okay, Ma'am? Margaret asked, keeping her voice neutral. Ashley looked up with red eyes. You won't tell anyone you saw me like this, right? No, ma'am, Margaret. I'll clean, I'll leave. It's just, sometimes life is so heavy, you know? Everyone thinks that because we have money, everything is easy. Margaret moved closer and sat a few steps below. Do you want to talk, Ma'am? Ashley looked at her in surprise. You speak English better than I thought. I understand sad people, Margaret said simply. And then, to her own surprise, Ashley began to open up. She talked about the pressure from her wealthy family, about the father who controlled her with money, about her fear of not being good enough. Margaret listened in silence, her heart aching as she recognized the human pain behind the cruelty. My husband doesn't even know I take anxiety medication, Ashley confessed. He thinks I'm strong, decisive. If he knew how weak I really am. You're not weak, Ma'am, Margaret said softly. You're afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of not being truly loved. Ashley stared at her in shock. How do you know that? Because I've been afraid too. From that night on, whenever Ashley saw Margaret cleaning, she stopped to talk. The daughter-in-law didn't know she was confiding in her own mother-in-law, but she began to see the cleaning lady as an unexpected confidant. Margaret, in turn, started to understand the woman who had rejected her better. Ashley wasn't just cruel, she was deeply insecure, raised in an environment where appearances mattered more than feelings. It was during one of these nighttime conversations that Ashley made a devastating confession. You know what I'm most afraid of, she said, sitting on the hallway floor as Margaret cleaned. I'm afraid of growing old and being abandoned. My father put her in a nursing home when she started getting sick. He said she was too much trouble. Margaret stopped cleaning. And did you see your mother after that? A few times. But she became so sad, so abandoned. She died alone, you know. Ashley's tears flowed freely. That's why I don't want to grow old. That's why I don't want anyone to see me weak. That's why you're afraid of your mother-in-law. Ashley nodded. My husband's mother. She represents everything I'm afraid of becoming. An old, poor, dependent woman. If I let her into our home, it's like accepting my own future. Margaret's heart ached. She finally understood the root of Ashley's cruelty. It wasn't pure malice, it was terror of her own fate. "But you're more than appearances, ma'am," Margaret said. "You have a good heart. I see it." "How could you know that?" "Because you talked to me. A bad person wouldn't talk to a cleaning lady." Ashley smiled through her tears. "You're wise. What's your name again?" Margaret hesitated. "Mary," she lied. "Mary, do you have family?" "I have a son." "Does he take good care of you?" He does what he can." "You're lucky. I wish I had a mother who talked to me like this." The irony of the situation nearly made Margaret cry. Here was her daughter-in-law wishing for a loving mother while rejecting the mother-in-law who could give her that love. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The months passed, and the relationship between Margaret and Ashley took an unexpected turn. The daughter-in-law began actively seeking out the cleaning lady to talk. She shared her fears, her insecurities, her problems with Michael. "My husband has been acting strange lately," Ashley confessed one night. "He gets nervous, receives odd phone calls. I think he's having trouble at work." Margaret knew exactly what the trouble was, but she couldn't reveal it. "Maybe you should talk to him." "He doesn't talk to me about these things. Thinks I won't understand." "Then talk to him anyway, show him you care." "You think so? A husband needs to know his wife is on his side." It was around this time that Margaret began leaving small anonymous notes in Michael and Ashley's mailbox. Messages of encouragement, lines from poems, words of affection. She signed them only as "someone who cares." The notes sparked curiosity in the couple. Michael thought it might be a secret admirer of Ashley. She suspected a romantic neighbor. Neither imagined it was the rejected mother and mother-in-law sending those words of love. One night, Margaret witnessed a nasty fight between the couple. She was cleaning the hallway when she heard shouts coming from the apartment. "You don't tell me anything, Michael," Ashley's voice echoed through the door. "It's nothing important, Ashley." "Not important? Your boss called here looking for you, mentioned some investigation." "That's none of your business." "How is it not my business? I'm your wife." "You're my wife when it's convenient. When my mother needed help, you couldn't even be bothered." "Your mother is different." "Different how? She raised me alone, worked her whole life to give me an education. And that means she has to live here? That I have to put up with the embarrassment?" "Embarrassment? What embarrassment?" "Michael, my friends can't know your mother is just a simple woman like that." The silence that followed was heavy. Margaret leaned against the wall, trying to hold back tears. At least her son had defended her, even if it was too late. "You know what, Ashley?" Michael's voice was different now, colder. "You might be the shallowest person I've ever met. How dare you? You care more about what others think than about real feelings. You kicked my mother out of our house because you were afraid of what the neighbors would say." "I have standards to maintain." "What standards? The standard of being heartless?" The argument went on for over an hour. Margaret finished cleaning the floor and went downstairs, but she couldn't shake the words from her mind. Maybe there was still hope for Michael after all. The following week, something unexpected happened. Margaret was cleaning the lobby when she saw Ashley step out of the elevator carrying a small suitcase. Her daughter-in-law looked different, more serious, less haughty. "Hi, Mary," Ashley said when she saw her. "Hello, Mum. Are you going on a trip?" "No, I'm leaving home for a few days. Marital troubles, you know how it is." Margaret nodded. "Would you like to talk?" Ashley glanced around and sat in one of the lobby chairs. "Mary, can I ask you something?" "Of course, ma'am." "Do you think a person can change? Like, someone who's always been bad, can they become good?" "People aren't born bad, ma'am. They turn bad because they've been hurt. And if they stop hurting, then they can stop being bad." Ashley was quiet for a moment. "I did something terrible, Mary. I kicked someone out of the house because I was ashamed of them, someone who didn't deserve it. You can apologize." "What if it's too late?" "It's never too late to do the right thing." Ashley stood, picked up her suitcase and headed to the elevator. Before stepping in, She turned back to Margaret. "Thank you, Mary. You always know what to say." Margaret was left alone in the lobby, her heart heavy. Was Ashley really changing? Was there still hope for her family? 3 days later, Ashley came back. But she looked different, simpler, without heavy makeup, wearing more understated clothes. When she ran into Margaret in the hallway, she stopped to chat as usual. "Mary, I made a huge mistake." "What happened, ma'am?" "I kicked my husband's mother out of the house, a 70-year-old woman. I put her out on the street because I was ashamed." Margaret felt her heart race but kept her expression neutral. "And now you want to make it right?" "I do, but I don't know how. She must hate me." Mothers don't hate their children. Mothers-in-law don't hate daughters-in-law who regret their mistakes. Do you really think so? "I'm sure of it. But what if she doesn't forgive me?" "Then you keep trying. Show her you've truly changed." Ashley nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "You're right, Mary, I need to find her." That night, Margaret finished her work with a lighter heart. Maybe there was light at the end of the tunnel. But the next day, everything changed. Margaret was cleaning the garage when she saw Michael talking to Mrs. Barbara, the building manager. From their gestures, it looked like a serious conversation. She discreetly moved closer to listen. "Mrs. Barbara, I need a favor," Michael was saying. "Go ahead, Dr. Michael." "Do you know the new cleaning lady, the one who works nights?" Margaret's heart pounded. "I do. Mary. Why?" "Well, my wife mentioned she's very attentive, chatty. I'm worried about whether she's trustworthy." "Trustworthy how?" "You know how it is. Employees who get too close to residents can become a problem. They might start asking for favors, money." Mrs. Barbara shook her head. "Listen, Dr. Michael, Mary is one of the best employees we've ever had. She works quietly, doesn't bother anyone. If your wife talked to her, it was because she wanted to. Even so, I'd prefer if you kept an eye on her. Sometimes people from humble backgrounds take advantage." Margaret felt a stab in her chest. Her own son, without knowing it was her, was treating her like a potential opportunist. "All right, doctor, I'll keep watch." Michael left, and Margaret stood there trembling. How was it possible that the boy she'd raised had become so prejudiced? That night, Mrs. Barbara called Margaret into her office. "Mary, I need to talk to you." "Did something happen, Mrs. Barbara?" "Well, some residents mentioned you've been talking to them a lot. I need you to be more discreet. I only answer when they ask me something." I know, but it's better to avoid it, okay? You're a great employee. I don't want you to have any trouble." Margaret nodded, but inside she was shattered. Even in disguise, even working honestly, she was still seen as a threat. From that night on, she avoided talking to Ashley. When her daughter-in-law tried to strike up a conversation, Margaret gave short answers and walked away. Ashley was confused and hurt by the change. "Mary, did I do something wrong?" she asked one night. "No, ma'am. I've just been very busy." "But you've changed toward me. You don't talk anymore." "It's better this way, ma'am." Ashley tried a few more times, but Margaret kept her distance. It was too painful to be so close to her daughter-in-law and not be able to reveal who she really was. Then, the unexpected happened. Margaret was cleaning the 14th floor when she heard a strange noise coming from Michael's apartment. Muffled sounds like someone choking. She pressed her ear to the door and heard it clearly. Someone was struggling to breathe. Without hesitation, Margaret unlocked the door with the master key Mrs. Barbara had given her for emergencies. She found Ashley on the living room floor, her face blue, clearly in the throes of a severe panic attack. "Help!" Margaret shouted, rushing to her side. Ashley was conscious but hyperventilating. Margaret knelt beside her, taking her hands. "Calm down, sweetheart, calm down. Breathe slowly with me." I can't," Ashley gasped. "Yes, you can. Look at me. Breathe in slowly. Like this. Now let it out." Margaret guided Ashley through breathing exercises she had learned years ago when Michael himself suffered from anxiety as a teenager. Little by little, her daughter-in-law began to calm down. "Better?" asked Margaret, stroking Ashley's face. "Better, thank you. I'll call your husband." "No," Ashley grabbed Margaret's hand. Please don't. He can't know. But you need medical help. I get like this sometimes. It's anxiety. It'll pass. Margaret helped Ashley sit on the couch and brought her a glass of water. Do you want me to stay for a while? You'd do that? Of course. The two sat there in silence, Ashley still trembling and Margaret holding her hand. After a few minutes, Ashley began to cry. Mary, I'm a horrible person. Don't say that. I am. I did something terrible to someone who didn't deserve it. We've talked about this before. People can change. But what if it's too late? What if she's dead? What if she got sick because of me? The despair in Ashley's voice was real and Margaret felt her heart tighten. You'll find her and ask for forgiveness. How? I don't even know where she is. Then you look. People who want to make things right always find a way. Ashley looked straight into Margaret's eyes. Why are you so good to me, Mary? You barely even know me. Margaret hesitated. For a moment, she wanted to take off the mask and reveal everything, but she couldn't, not yet. Because everyone deserves a second chance. That night, Margaret returned to her boarding house with a troubled heart. Ashley was changing, that much was clear, but the damage had already been done. How do you rebuild a relationship after so much pain? The next day, shocking news shook the building. Michael showed up at work with devastating news. He had been fired from the university. The plagiarism investigation was over, and he had lost both his job and his master's degree. The news spread quickly among the staff. Margaret heard it from William, who had overheard the conversation between Michael and the superintendent about possible delays in paying the condo fees. Poor Dr. Michael, William commented. Seems like his life fell apart overnight. Margaret pretended not to know the details, but inside she was shattered. The son she had raised, who had studied so hard to make something of himself, was now losing everything because of his own bad choices. That evening she found Ashley in the hallway, visibly shaken. Mary, did you hear what happened to my husband? I did. I'm so sorry. He lost his job. He'd been under investigation for months and didn't tell me anything. And now I don't know what to do. He's destroyed, locked himself in the bedroom, won't talk to me. Margaret stepped closer. Do you want some advice? Yes. Stand by him. Show him that no matter what happens, you'll be there. But what if he doesn't want my help? Then you stay anyway. A husband needs to know he's not alone. Ashley nodded, her eyes filled with tears. You're right. I need to be strong for both of us now. And you will be. How do you know? Because I've watched you grow these past few months. You're not the same person anymore. Ashley smiled through her tears. Thank you, Mary. You're like the mother I never had. Ashley's words struck Margaret like lightning. Her daughter-in-law was right there, longing for a mother figure, unaware she was speaking to the very mother-in-law she had rejected. You'll be a good wife to your husband, Margaret said, her voice choked, and I'll find his mother too. I'll ask for forgiveness and bring her back home. Margaret could barely speak. I'm sure she'll forgive you. That night, Margaret couldn't sleep. Ashley's words echoed in her mind. Her daughter-in-law had truly changed, but how could she reveal the truth now? How could she say that the cleaning lady she trusted was the same mother-in-law she had humiliated? The following week, Michael and Ashley's situation took a drastic turn for the worse. Without the college salary, they began facing financial difficulties. Margaret noticed the signs: fewer groceries, bills arriving with late notices, arguments about cutting expenses. It was during one of these arguments that she heard something alarming. Ashley, we'll have to sell the apartment, Michael said. Sell? But this is our home. Our expensive home that we can't afford anymore. The maintenance fee alone costs more than what many people earn in a month. And where will we live? We'll have to find something simpler, maybe in a cheaper neighborhood. My friends, my family, what will they think? Ashley, right now, it doesn't matter what others think, we're almost bankrupt. Margaret felt her heart tighten. Her son was going through real hardship, and she couldn't help. Or could she? That night she did something she hadn't planned. She left an anonymous envelope at Michael's apartment door. Inside was half the money she had saved working as a cleaner, along with a note. For those going through tough times, don't give up, better days will come. The next morning, she overheard Michael and Ashley talking about the mysterious envelope. Who could have left this? Ashley wondered. I don't know, but it's a blessing. At least we can pay this month's bills. Michael, this money, it looks like it was saved coin by coin. Look at all the small bills, some even crumpled. It's honest, hard-earned money. Someone sacrificed themselves to help us. It makes me think, is your mother struggling too? Margaret stopped cleaning to listen closer. Why are you thinking about her now? Because I kicked out a 70-year-old woman from our home, Michael. What if she has nowhere to live? What if she's going hungry? Ashley, no, let me speak. I need to find your mother. I need to apologize and bring her back. You changed your mind? I've changed as a person, Michael. These past months have made me realize a lot. Like what? That I was afraid of the future and took it out on the wrong person. Your mother raised you alone, worked so you could study, and I treated her like trash. The silence that followed was heavy. Ashley, I'm also to blame. I should have stood up for you that day. And I should have supported you when you were under investigation. We're two selfish people who need to learn how to be a real family. Margaret had to step away from the door to cry in peace. Finally, her loved ones were understanding what truly mattered. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. In the following days, Michael and Ashley began actively searching for Margaret. They went to the hotel in downtown Miami where she had stayed, but she had left long ago. They checked boarding houses in the area, asked at churches and social assistance centers. Margaret watched everything from afar, her heart torn between the joy of seeing they cared and the anguish of not being able to reveal herself yet. One night, while cleaning the hallway, she heard Ashley on the phone with someone. Mom, I know we haven't spoken in years, but I need your help. It's about Michael's mother. No, Mom, listen. I did something terrible, and I need to make it right. Margaret hid behind a pillar to listen better. Yes, Mom, I know you always said she was a good person. Yeah, you were right. And I was wrong. Can you help me find her? The conversation went on for several minutes. Margaret discovered that Ashley was calling her own mother, with whom she had a troubled relationship, asking for help to find her mother-in-law. Thank you, Mom. I know I don't deserve your help, but she deserves my forgiveness. I love you too. When Ashley hung up, she was crying. Margaret approached her. Are you okay, Mom? Hi, Mary. I'm trying to fix the mistakes of my life. Is it hard? Very, but necessary. You know, I've never apologized to anyone in my life. I always thought it was humiliating. And now? Now I see that humiliation is living without love because of pride. Margaret felt tears in her eyes. You'll find the person you're looking for. You think so? I'm sure. And she'll forgive you. How can you be so sure? Because I know a mother's heart. Ashley looked at Margaret curiously. Do you have children, Mary? I have a son. Does he treat you well? He's learning. Just like I'm learning. Just like you're learning. That night, Margaret made a decision. It was time to reveal the truth. But first, she wanted to be sure Michael had truly changed. The next day, she did something risky. She intentionally dropped her work ID near Michael's apartment, knowing he'd find it. Inside was her real identity. A few hours later, she heard Michael shouting in the hallway, Ashley, Ashley, come here quick. What is it? The cleaning lady. Mary, look at this. Margaret heard hurried footsteps. Oh my God, Michael, it's your mother. The cleaning lady is your mother. She was here the whole time, working in the same building where I live. And I talked to her every night. She gave me advice, comforted me. Ashley's voice was thick with emotion. She knew who I was and still treated me with kindness. Where is she now? She must be working. Michael, what do we do? We'll wait for her to show up and we'll beg for forgiveness on our knees if we have to. Margaret, hidden in the service stairway, smiled through her tears. The moment of truth had finally come. She waited until the end of her shift and went up to the 14th floor as usual. This time, Michael and Ashley were waiting in the hallway. When they saw her, they both stood up immediately. "Mom," Michael said, his voice breaking. Margaret stopped, still wearing her protective mask and cleaning uniform. "Hi, Michael. You're Mary?" Margaret slowly removed her mask, revealing her face. "I'm your mother." Ashley began sobbing uncontrollably. "Mrs. Margaret, I didn't know all this time." "I know, Ashley. You gave me advice, comforted me, helped me, even though I treated you so horribly." Michael stepped closer, his eyes filled with tears. "Mum, forgive me for what I did. Forgive me for letting Ashley humiliate you. Forgive me for not defending you. And Ashley could barely speak. "I need to ask for forgiveness for everything. For the awful things I said. For throwing your things in the hallway, for slamming the door in your face." Margaret looked at them both. The son she'd raised, now humble and remorseful. The daughter-in-law who'd rejected her, now shattered with guilt. "You both hurt me deeply," she said, her voice steady but not harsh. "We know, Mom, and if you can never forgive us, we understand," Michael said. "But," Margaret continued, "these months watching you have shown me people can truly change. Can you forgive us?" Ashley asked, tears streaming down. "I forgave you a long time ago, my daughter." The words, "my daughter," made Ashley completely break down. She threw herself into Margaret's arms, begging for forgiveness between sobs. Michael joined the embrace, and the three stood there in the hallway, crying and reconciling. "Mum, will you come back home?" Michael asked. "Only if you're sure. I don't want to be a burden anymore." "A burden?" Ashley stepped back to look at her. "Mrs. Margaret, you were my salvation these past months. If it weren't for your words, I would have lost my mind." "It's true, Mum. And now that we've lost the apartment, we'll have to sell it. I can't afford it anymore after losing my job." "Then let's find a simpler place where we can live as a real family," said Margaret. "You don't mind living somewhere more modest?" "Michael, I've lived modestly my whole life. What matters is being with you." That night, Margaret slept in the guest room of the apartment for the first time in months. Ashley insisted on making dinner, even though she burned the food from nerves. "Sorry, Mrs. Margaret. I never really learned to cook properly." "It's okay, dear. I'll teach you." You can really call me dear even after everything. You're my son's wife. That makes you my daughter." Ashley cried again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. In the days that followed, a lot changed. Michael got a job as a teacher at a public school, earning much less than before but with his dignity restored. They sold the apartment in South Beach and bought a modest house in Little Havana. Margaret helped with the move, organizing their belongings and teaching Ashley how to care for a real home. Her daughter-in-law, who had always had maids, eagerly learned every household task. "Mrs. Margaret, how do you make the house always smell so nice?" "The secret is love, dear. A home with love always smells good." "And cleaning too, right?" "And cleaning too," Margaret laughed. The new house in Little Havana was small but cozy. It had a backyard where Margaret planted a garden, and Ashley learned to tend to the plants. Michael set up a small office where he gave private lessons to supplement their income. One evening, while preparing dinner together, Ashley made a confession to Margaret. "Mrs. Margaret, can I tell you something?" "Of course, dear." I was pregnant when I kicked you out of the house." Margaret stopped chopping vegetables. "Pregnant?" 3 weeks along. I didn't even know yet. I found out later at the doctor's. And what happened? I lost the baby a few days later. The doctor said it was because of stress. Margaret stepped closer and hugged her daughter-in-law. "I'm so sorry, dear. I think it was punishment for being so cruel to you." "Don't say that. These things happen. But I keep thinking, if I'd been a better person, if I'd welcomed you into our home, maybe." "Ashley, listen to me. You didn't lose your baby because you were unkind to me. You lost it because sometimes life is just that way. But now you're a different person, and when another baby comes, they'll be born into a family full of love. You think I'll get pregnant again?" "I'm sure of it. And I'll be here to help you take care of my grandbaby." Ashley cried in Margaret's arms, finally allowing herself to dream of a better future. 6 months after their reconciliation, the family's life had completely transformed. Michael was happy in his new job, Ashley had learned to cook and care for the house, and Margaret felt useful and loved again. It was on a Sunday morning, as they had coffee in the backyard, that Ashley shared the news they'd all been waiting for. "Mrs. Margaret, Michael, I have something to tell you." "What is it, dear?" Ashley smiled and placed a hand on her still flat stomach. "I'm pregnant." Margaret and Michael erupted in shouts of joy, hugs, tears, plans for the future. Finally, the family was whole and ready to grow. "Mrs. Margaret, will you help me with the baby?" "I'll be here for everything you need, dear." "And if it's a boy, we'll name him Francis, after my grandfather," said Michael. "And if it's a girl?" asked Ashley. "If it's a girl, her name will be Hope," said Margaret, "because she'll be born after so much waiting." The months of pregnancy were the happiest Margaret had ever lived. She accompanied Ashley to every doctor's appointment, taught her nutritious recipes, and knitted baby clothes. Ashley proved to be a devoted mother-to-be, reading books about motherhood and taking good care of herself. Michael was overjoyed. He had gotten a promotion at school and was finishing a new academic research project, this time with complete honesty and transparency. One evening, as Margaret massaged Ashley's swollen feet, her daughter-in-law reflected. "Mrs. Margaret, do you think people are born good or bad?" "I think people are born with the potential for both, dear. It depends on the choices they make. I made bad choices for a long time, but now you make good ones. Why did you forgive me so easily?" Margaret stopped massaging and looked at Ashley. "Because I saw your heart, dear. Even when you were being cruel, I could tell it was fear, not malice." "Fear of what?" "Fear of not being loved. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of growing old and alone." "How did you know?" "Because I've had those fears too." Ashley held Margaret's hand. "You'll never be alone, I promise. And you'll never be abandoned. I promise too." On the day of the birth, Margaret was the first person Ashley wanted by her side. Michael was nervous, pacing back and forth, but Margaret stayed calm, holding her daughter-in-law's hand through the contractions. "Mrs. Margaret, I'm scared," Ashley said between contractions. "Scared of what, dear?" "Scared I won't know how to be a mother. What if I don't take good care of her?" "No one is born knowing how to be a mother. You learn day by day. What if I make a mistake? Then you fix it and do better next time. Being a mother is all about making mistakes, learning and improving. Will you teach me? I'll be by your side for everything." The baby was born at 6 in the morning on a sunny Tuesday, a beautiful girl with dark hair and big eyes. When the nurse placed the child in Ashley's arms, she looked at Margaret with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Margaret, I want you to be the first to hold her after me." Margaret cradled her granddaughter with infinite tenderness. The baby opened her little eyes and looked straight at her, as if she already knew her. "Hi, my princess. I'm your grandma," Margaret whispered. "What should we name her?" Michael asked. "Hope," Ashley said without hesitation. "Hope, Margaret." The emotion filled the delivery room. Nurses, doctors, everyone was moved by that moment of pure love. The first months of Hope's life were intense. Margaret took turns with Ashley caring for the baby, teaching her how to change diapers, give baths, and soothe her cries. Ashley was a natural mother, full of patience and affection. Michael was a doting father. He'd come home from work and go straight to the crib, telling his daughter about his day, sharing stories, and singing lullabies, the same ones Margaret had sung to him as a child. One night, as Margaret fed Hope her bottle, Ashley sat beside her. "Mrs. Margaret, can I ask you something?" "Of course, dear." "When I kicked you out of the house, were you angry with me?" Margaret thought for a moment. "I was hurt, very hurt. But angry? No. How so?" "Because I could see you were suffering too. No one is cruel without reason, Ashley. There's always pain behind it. And you could see my pain even when I was so awful." "I could. And that's why I knew you'd change one day." Ashley leaned in and kissed Margaret's forehead. "Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for changing." On Hope's first birthday, the family threw a party in the backyard of their house in Little Havana. Neighbors came, along with Michael's co-workers and some friends Ashley had made in the neighborhood. Mrs. Barbara, the building manager in South Beach, was also invited. "Wow, Mrs. Margaret, what a transformation," said Mrs. Barbara. "When I found out you were Dr. Michael's mother, I could hardly believe it. Life is full of surprises, Mrs. Barbara. And what a wonderful surprise. Just look at this beautiful family." Margaret looked around. Michael playing with Hope in his arms, Ashley serving cake to the guests, the garden plants blooming, neighbors laughing and chatting. It was everything she had ever dreamed of. A close-knit family, a home filled with love, a future brimming with hope. William, the former security guard of the building, was also at the party. He had been promoted to doorman and was still the kind man who had helped Margaret on the hardest night of her life. "Mrs. Margaret, do you remember the night we met?" "How could I forget, William? You were an angel in my life. I only did what any decent person would do." "No, you did more than that. You gave me dignity when I needed it most. And look where you are now. Grandmother to the most beautiful girl in the world." Hope, as if she knew they were talking about her, let out a delighted laugh in her father's arms. When the guests left and the family was alone, they sat in the backyard to talk about the day. "Mom, thank you for forgiving us," Michael said suddenly. "Thank me for what?" "For giving our family a second chance." "Michael, family isn't something you abandon. Family is something you rebuild as many times as it takes." "Mrs. Margaret," said Ashley, with Hope sleeping in her arms, "do you think our daughter will grow up knowing what real family is?" "I'm sure of it, dear. She'll grow up seeing love every day." "What if one day she makes the same mistakes I did?" "Then you'll do what I did. You'll forgive. You'll guide her. You'll show her the right path." "What if she doesn't want to listen?" "Then you'll wait. With patience. With love. Until she's ready to understand." Ashley looked down at her sleeping daughter. "Hope, my princess, you'll grow up in a family where love is stronger than pride." Margaret smiled, watching the scene. 3 generations there, united by the love she had never stopped believing in. She looked up at the stars and silently gave thanks for having the strength not to give up, for seeing beyond appearances, for forgiving when it would have been easier to hold a grudge. Life had taught her that true love never gives up, that family is built every day with patience, understanding, and faith, that people can change when they find someone who believes in them, and that sometimes to find happiness you have to walk through the deepest valley of pain, but in the end, always in the end, love wins. 2 years later, the family received unexpected news. Michael had been invited to teach at a private university with a very good salary. The recognition for his honest and dedicated work had finally come. "Mom, Ashley, we have a decision to make," he said during dinner. "What decision?" asked Margaret. "With this new salary, we could move back to South Beach if we wanted." Ashley and Margaret exchanged glances. "And do you want to?" asked Margaret. "I don't know," said Michael. "What do you think?" Ashley was the first to answer. "You know what? I like it here. I like our neighbors, our backyard, our simple life." "Really?" Michael seemed surprised. "Michael, I've learned that home isn't about fancy or beautiful places. Home is where you feel loved." Margaret smiled. "And I feel loved here," she added. "Then it's decided," said Michael. "We're staying in Little Havana. Let's use the extra money to renovate the house, maybe make a bigger room for Hope." "And a hammock in the backyard," said Ashley excitedly. "And more plants in the garden," added Margaret. Hope, now 2 years old, clapped her hands as if she approved of all the ideas. That evening, Margaret was in the backyard watering the plants when Ashley approached her. "Mrs. Margaret, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, dear." "I'm pregnant again." Margaret nearly dropped the watering can. "Really? Really? I found out today. I haven't told Michael yet." "Oh, what joy." Margaret hugged her daughter-in-law. "How are you feeling?" "Happy. So happy. And ready. This time I know I'll take good care of everything." "You will, dear? You've become a wonderful mother." "I learned from the best teacher," said Ashley, looking affectionately at Margaret. At dinner the next day, Ashley broke the news to Michael, and Margaret watched her son's pure happiness. He scooped his wife into his arms, spun her around the room, and accidentally woke Hope with his celebratory shouts. "Another grandbaby for Grandma," he said, hugging Margaret. "I'm shaking with excitement," she said, laughing. "And now we'll have to think of a name," said Ashley. "If it's a boy, I'd like him to be William," said Margaret, "in honor of the man who helped me when I needed it most." "Perfect," agreed Michael. "And if it's a girl?" "Victoria," said Ashley, "because our family is a victory of love." The months passed in a happy, busy routine. Hope grew smart and affectionate. Ashley had a smooth pregnancy. Michael was fulfilled at work. And Margaret split her time between caring for her granddaughter and preparing for the new baby. One afternoon, while Hope played in the backyard and Ashley rested, Margaret received an unexpected visitor. It was an elegant woman in her 60s, someone she'd never spoken to before. "Are you Mrs. Margaret?" "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" "I'm Helen, Ashley's mother." Margaret was surprised. Ashley had mentioned her mother a few times, but always said they had a distant relationship. "Please come in. Ashley is here." "Actually, I wanted to talk to you first, if that's okay." The two sat in the backyard while Hope continued playing nearby. "Mrs. Margaret, I came here to apologize." "Apologize for what?" "For raising my daughter so superficially. For teaching her to value appearances over feelings." Margaret stayed silent, letting Helen continue. "When Ashley called me months ago, asking for help to find you, I realized how much she'd changed. And I also realized how much I'd failed as a mother. Helen, we all do the best we can." "No, Mrs. Margaret, I didn't do my best. I raised Ashley to be prejudiced, to judge people by their bank accounts. But she changed. Thanks to you, you had the patience and love I never knew how to give." Margaret looked at Helen and saw a woman truly remorseful. "Would you like to meet your granddaughter properly?" Margaret asked. "May I?" "Of course." "Hope, come here. Come meet your grandma, Helen." The child ran into Margaret's arms and looked curiously at the unfamiliar woman. "Hi, my princess," said Helen, her voice trembling. "I'm your other grandma." Hope smiled and reached her little arms out to Helen, who held her with tears in her eyes. "She's so beautiful," Helen whispered. "Ashley has been a wonderful mother," said Margaret. "You can be proud of the daughter you raised. After all my mistakes, especially after the mistakes, it's easy to be good when you've never done wrong. The hard part is admitting your faults and changing." When Ashley woke from her nap and saw her mother playing with Hope in the backyard beside Margaret, she stopped in the doorway, stunned. "Mom." "Hi, sweetheart. What are you doing here?" "I came to get to know my granddaughter better and to ask for your forgiveness." Ashley approached cautiously. "Forgiveness for what?" "For raising you the wrong way, for teaching you the wrong values." "Mom, let me speak, Ashley. Mrs. Margaret welcomed me here with a generosity I don't deserve. She let me play with my granddaughter, spoke to me with kindness. That's what a mother-in-law should have done for you." Ashley sat beside her mother. "Mom, I'm also to blame. I chose to be prejudiced." "You were 25 when you got married, sweetheart. You were still learning about life. I was 50 and still giving you terrible advice. But now we've both changed, right? We have, and thanks to Mrs. Margaret." The three women stayed there in the backyard, talking until Michael came home from work. When he saw his mother-in-law, he was surprised, but greeted her warmly. "Mrs. Helen, it's so good to see you." "Michael, I came to apologize to you too, for supporting Ashley when she kicked your mother out of the house." "It's okay, Mrs. Helen. What matters is we're all here now. Can I be part of your lives? I promise I'll try harder to be a better grandmother than I was a mother." "Of course you can," said Margaret. "Hope needs to know all her grandmothers." That night during dinner, Helen made an unexpected offer. "Ashley, Michael, I want to help you with something." "Help how?" asked Ashley. "Financially. Not for you to change your lives, but to improve the life you already have." "Mom, we don't need—" "Yes, you do. You're expecting another child. Hope will grow up and need more space. Let me renovate your house." "Mrs. Helen, that's too generous," said Michael. It's not generosity, it's my duty. It's the least I can do after causing so much trouble for your happiness." Margaret watched the conversation with a smile, another person learning the value of love over pride. "Accept your mother's help," she said, "but don't change the heart of the home. What makes our house special isn't its size, it's the love inside." "Exactly," agreed Helen. "We'll improve, not change." The months that followed were full of joy and activity. Helen became a constant presence in the house, helping with Hope, learning to cook with Margaret, attending Ashley's doctor appointments. The renovation was done little by little, always respecting the simple, cozy style of the home. A bigger room for Hope, a nursery for the baby on the way, a sunroom where Margaret could have even more plants. When Ashley was 8 months pregnant, something unexpected happened. During a routine checkup, the doctor discovered she was expecting twins. "Twins?" said Michael, nearly fainting in his chair. "Two babies?" asked Ashley in disbelief. "Two healthy babies," confirmed the doctor, "a girl and a boy." The whole family was in a state of happy shock. 2 children at once. Hope would have 2 little siblings to play with. "Mrs. Margaret, can you handle 3 little grandchildren?" asked Ashley, worried. "Sweetheart, I'll handle as many grandchildren as God sends," laughed Margaret. "And I'll be here to help too," said Helen. 2 grandmothers for 3 children. It'll work out just fine." Preparations for the twins' arrival were intense. Michael assembled the second crib. Ashley and Margaret knitted double the baby clothes. Helen took charge of buying all the necessary accessories. "What will we name them?" asked Michael. "The boy will be William, as we agreed," said Ashley. "And the girl?" "Victoria," said Margaret. "So we never forget that love always wins." The twins' birth went smoother than expected. William was born first, weighing 7 pounds. Victoria arrived 15 minutes later, weighing exactly 6 pounds 6 ounces. The maternity ward waiting room was packed. Michael, Margaret, Helen, Mrs. Barbara, William the doorman, even some neighbors from Little Havana had come to visit. "Looks like a party," the nurse laughed. "It is a party," said Margaret. "It's the celebration of life." When they finally got to see Ashley and the babies, the emotion was overwhelming. She was radiant, holding each twin in her arms. Hope sitting on the bed beside her, curiously eyeing her little siblings. "Mommy, they're so tiny," said Hope. "Yes, they are, my princess, but they'll grow up fast. Can I take care of them?" "You'll help Grandma Margaret and Grandma Helen look after them." Margaret cradled William in her arms, and Helen held Victoria. The 2 grandmothers exchanged teary glances. "Our family is complete," said Helen. "It's just beginning," Margaret corrected. "These 3 will grow up and have children too. We'll have great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and they'll all grow up knowing what real love is," Ashley added. The first months with the twins were a constant adventure. Margaret and Helen took turns caring for them. Michael helped whenever he was home, and Hope became the most devoted big sister in the world. The house in Little Havana was always full of life. Baby cries, children's laughter, adult conversations, and a steady stream of visitors. It was exactly what Margaret had always dreamed of. A home truly filled with love. One night, as she rocked Victoria to sleep, Ashley approached Margaret. "Mrs. Margaret, can I ask you something?" "Of course, dear. Are you happy?" Margaret looked around. William asleep in the crib beside her, Hope sleeping in her room, Michael studying in the living room, Helen washing the dinner dishes, the house quiet and cozy. "I'm the happiest woman in the world, dear." "Even after everything you've been through?" "Because of everything I've been through. If I hadn't gone through that pain, you wouldn't have learned to cherish love. If you hadn't rejected me, you'd never have discovered how much you needed me." "So you don't regret anything?" "I regret taking so long to forgive you in my heart. I should have forgiven you from day one." "Why didn't you?" "Because I needed to learn too. To learn that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength. That loving isn't humiliating, it's uplifting." Ashley kissed Margaret's forehead. "Thank you for being so strong, Mrs. Margaret. Thank you for letting me love you, dear." In the years that followed, the family kept growing in happiness and unity. Hope became a smart and affectionate girl, always ready to help with her brothers. William grew up just like his father, serious, studious, but big-hearted. Victoria inherited her mother's strong personality, tempered with the sweetness she'd learned to nurture. Michael became a respected and beloved teacher, his story of perseverance and honesty inspiring many young people. Ashley got involved in community work, helping other families facing hardships. Helen moved to a nearby house and became a daily presence in her grandchildren's lives. She and Margaret developed a sincere friendship, built on their shared love for the family they helped raise. And Margaret found complete fulfillment as a grandmother and family matriarch. At 78, she was more active and joyful than ever, tending her garden, cooking delicious meals, telling stories to her grandchildren, the loving heart of a close-knit family. One Sunday afternoon, as the whole family gathered in the backyard, Michael reading to the kids, Ashley and Helen preparing lunch, Margaret watering the plants, she paused to take in the scene. She remembered the cold night she'd slept on a park bench, rejected and humiliated. She remembered Ashley's cruel words, Michael's cowardly silence, the loneliness that nearly broke her. But she looked around now and saw the miracle love had built. An imperfect family that had learned to truly love one another, people who made mistakes, got hurt, but found the courage to start over. Hope ran up to her, little arms outstretched. "Grandma, come play with us." "Coming, my princess." Margaret put away the watering can, wiped her hands on her apron and went to join the family. She sat on the grass, Hope in her lap, William and Victoria on either side, while Michael told the story of a very wise grandmother who taught an entire family the true meaning of love. "And did they live happily ever after?" asked Victoria. "Yes, they did," said Michael, looking tenderly at Margaret, "because they learned that family isn't about perfection. Family is about forgiveness, understanding, and lots of love." "Just like our family, Dad?" asked William. "Just like our family, my son." Margaret smiled, hugging her grandchildren. At 78 years old, she finally knew what true happiness was. It wasn't about having a life without problems, but having people who loved you despite them. It wasn't about never suffering, but knowing there was always hope after the suffering. It was having a family that, even imperfect, was hers. It was having a home that, even simple, was full of love. It was knowing her life had been meaningful, that her love had transformed people, that her story had a happy ending. The sun set over Little Havana, painting the sky orange and pink. In the backyard of the modest house, a family gathered around the love a courageous grandmother refused to let die. And so, they proved that it doesn't matter how big the house is or how much money is in the bank. What matters is the size of the heart and the strength of the love built every day, with patience, forgiveness, and faith. The end of the story. This story shows us that the true fragrance of a home doesn't come from expensive air fresheners, but from the sweet scent of real love. Tell us in the comments, do you think Margaret made the right choice by forgiving Ashley? Have you experienced a similar situation in your family? Share your story with us. We love reading your experiences. Don't forget to like this to help us keep bringing you heartwarming stories, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates.